Krishna is saying in the 4th chapter, verse 21, even in doing physical labor, as opposed to meditative work, one incurs no karmic limitation who has renounced all sense of possession, who is without personal desires, and whose feelings or chitta are controlled by the inner self. So whatever you do, don't feel that although people think of the Shudra state as physical work, you can be a saint and still do physical work. It all depends on your state of consciousness. And in trying to define the castes outwardly by their different outward duties, the truth is that all duty, if it is done for God, is elevating. He is free from karmic involvement, who is contented with whatever comes to him, uninvited, who is even-minded and untouched by duality, who is without envy, jealousy, and animosity, and finally, who views success and failure with equanimity. We need to understand that to free ourselves from karmic environment, my Guru said, whatever comes of itself, let it come. This is a very important lesson. I know when he first got his headquarters in America, Laurie Pratt, who was one of his disciples, and a fairly close one, he said, what a wonderful thing now it will be that I can serve so many more people from this headquarters. And her comment was, now your troubles begin. And all she could see was troubles, all she could see was difficulties. And in this, I think she fell, because she did not really fully appreciate what her Guru brought. And yet he knew he would have those problems, but they didn't mean anything to him. Yes, he had great problems. That song that I sang to you recently, Dukhero Beshi Ashiyo, come to me as sorrow, because in sorrow I will not be able to forget you. In sorrow I think of you more. And at the end of his life, he wouldn't listen to that recording anymore. He'd had enough of that. And yet, he didn't care. He embraced everything. He was willing to go through all troubles and trials and persecutions and everything. Jesus Christ could easily have called on the angels to save him from death on the cross. And yet, he said he obviously would have liked to. He said so. But he said, nevertheless, thy will be done. And so my Guru, although there was natural human reaction, still, thy will be done. He accepted whatever came to him. And you can do this in small ways. You go to a restaurant and they don't feed you the way you would like to, accept it. You don't have to be sort of dull or vapid in your understanding, but just accept it in God's name. You will find that if, however people treat you, however the world treats you, if you can accept it, for example, if your boss misunderstands you and fires you, you could easily be very upset by that, because it would mean no more livelihood for you. You'd have to get another job, and you'd know perhaps that he didn't do it justly, that you weren't the one at fault. Maybe you know who is at fault. It will be a great karmic plus for you if you don't say who did it, if you don't try to justify yourself, if you just say whatever comes of itself, let it come. Now that seems irresponsible, doesn't it? I mean, you have to have a job, you have to support your family, and how will you do if they starve to death? Obviously that's not the right alternative. But the truth of it is that if you really accept it completely as God's gift to you, then you will find that he will give you some better opportunity, better job, better whatever. But the first thing is to learn acceptance. This is what the Gita is teaching here. Whatever comes of itself, let it come. With that amount of detachment, what you will always be is at that center, like on the ski slope. From this center, you'll be able to go in this direction or that. But if you're absolutely dedicated to going in one direction, you'll stumble if it doesn't work for you. If you suddenly have to find you need to turn right, you won't be able to. So being completely centered in yourself makes it possible for you to accept whatever comes. And sometimes whatever comes is very difficult. I had to endure being thrown out of my guru's organization for reasons that I knew were untrue, invalid. And there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I remember I was kneeling before these two senior disciples for about an hour with my hands like this, and there was nothing I could say. Anything I say, I saw that they wanted to destroy me, and there was nothing I could do. I just had to sit there and take it. And it looked to me as if my life had ended. My whole life was serving my guru, and they took that away from me. Because of misunderstanding, perhaps because of jealousy, I don't know. I'm not worried about their motivations, but I know they only left me with the money that was in my wallet. No other income. I was 36 years old, and I was stranded in New York where they had told me to come and meet them from India. I knew nobody there. They had promised to fiercely persecute me if I contacted anybody whom I knew who was in SRF. And I didn't know anybody after 14 years on the path who was not in SRF. It was really quite a fierce test. But I didn't accept it. That was my mistake. If I had, I'd have gone through very easily. But I had in mind this definition that my life had to be serving my guru, which it always has been, and was the truth in my understanding. But the thought that I had to serve him through that organization which he had founded. And obviously he himself didn't want me to do that. He had told me that I should write, lecture, edit. These three things he said. I said to him one time, "Sir, but haven't you already written all the things that need to be written?" He looked a little shocked. He said, "Don't say that. Much more is needed." Well, anyway, it was certainly a truth, and I knew it was a truth, and I was wondering how I would ever be able to fulfill his command to me to edit and to write. I was never given a chance to write anything. I was always given other jobs that would preclude my writing. But I also knew perfectly that if I did write anything, they would never publish anything I wrote. Because he finished his work, his Bhagavad Gita in 1950, and he said that he wanted it out immediately. And I said to his editor, who was senior to me, that he said that this would come out this year. And she said, "Oh, it couldn't possibly come out this year." And I told him, and he said, delays, I'm going to write her a letter. I thought that his letter would be reprimanding her. Instead, it had nothing to do with that. And she understood when I went to her, because I said, "It's my fault," thinking that this would be a cause of difficulty between them. And when I said it's my fault, she realized he had meant more than he had said in his letter, because he didn't want to tell her. She wasn't ready to hear it. Anyway, when that book came out, finally, it was 40 or 45 years later. And what would they have done with my books? They haven't edited yet many books that he wrote. So no, I knew that I wouldn't be able to write, but I felt that my whole definition, my self-definition, was serving his work. And I could not have served him in the way he had told me if I had stayed in that work. It was a big dilemma for me. He resolved it for me. He threw me out of that work, but I couldn't understand that. When you can learn to accept what comes and be even-minded and cheerful under all circumstances, whatever comes of itself, let it come. You don't make it happen, but it came of itself. Then it was a good thing. Had I left, it wouldn't have come of itself. Had I said, "No, you're not spreading his teachings the way you should, and more explanations and so on are needed, his books need to be edited, etc., etc., that would not have been the right action. It was right, and the only possible way that I could follow the path of karma, of dharma, I should say, by being kicked out. Then I was put in that position where I had to find other ways of serving him. And this is the reason I came also into writing music. I didn't ever want to conflict with anything they were doing. And so I knew they weren't writing music, but I thought that music might be a very good way of helping to spread his teachings. So I wrote these teachings into songs, and they have been recorded and played all over the world, really. And there are some hotels that play it and some restaurants that play it. And it's a wonderful way to spread out and reach people. So anyway, with this accepting whatever comes of itself, let it come, with that attitude, I found that bit by bit, because I was afraid to do anything that would conflict with what they wanted. I knew that he wanted to start communities. I myself had wanted to start communities from the age of 15. And when I said to Dayamata, who was the president still, I said to her, when are we going to start these communities? He had talked so fervently about them. But what she said was, frankly, I'm not interested. Well, let her decide what she thinks is Master's teaching, but I know this is what he wanted. He said it fervently all through his life. He cannot have changed his mind on it. And if she wasn't interested, what it did was release me, because it wouldn't have been a conflict with them. So I could start communities. That was another thing they weren't doing. Anyway, with very great care to be completely dharmic, never to oppose. And I am sorry if I'm opposing them in saying what I'm saying now, but after so many years, perhaps these things should be said. At any rate, in this way, I found that I was able to follow the right path, but God pushed me in that way. I didn't take it from my own desire. He put me in positions where I had no choice but to do this. I remember when I first was invited by Dr. Chaudhary of the Cultural Integration Fellowship to sing at a Mahatma Gandhi service on October 7th, I think it is. And Dr. Chaudhary kept inviting me, and I kept refusing. I had been told not to do any public work, so I tried to obey. But there was nothing that I could think to do, and I had to serve Master in some way. And I remember that night my parents were invited to a party up the road, and that was where I met the Chaudharys. Well, before I went to that party, I was thinking, shall I go? They had asked me to come with them. And I finally thought, well, better go to this than just lie on my bed and look at the ceiling, which is all I was doing, and praying to be allowed to die. And when I went there, and he invited me to come and sing when he heard that I was Swami Kriyananda, who had recorded songs, and they liked the songs so well, the chants. He didn't give up. He kept phoning. Later he told me, I felt that your guru wanted you to get into this work. And so I did go, and usually when I give a talk, I don't have other people rushing toward me, asking me to give talks elsewhere. I didn't even talk at this occasion. I only sang. But two people, one from the Indian Students Association of Davis University and another from the Unitarian Church, both came to me and pleaded with me to lecture for their groups. And I didn't want to lecture. I felt, no, I've been told not to, and I want to still be obedient if I can be. And so I said no. But I finally, after again, this never happens normally, but they kept phoning me, long distance, phoning me, pleading with me. Finally I said, all right, I wasn't getting any other guidance, so maybe I should just go ahead and do this. So when this person who threw me out found that I had done that, I told her I didn't go looking for these things. They came to me. Oh yes, I know, you went in public places and sat and waited for people to come to you. That wasn't what happened at all. I was completely misunderstood. What comes of itself, let it come. That was a difficult time for me. It was very hard to let it come, to let her be so absolutely mean, and just let it be. I remember one time she was talking to me. I said, I'd rather not talk about it. I didn't want to combat her. I didn't want to argue. I just let it be. But bit by bit, I saw that God did lead me. He took me by the hand and took me in the directions that I needed to go. And so it was that bit by bit, you will find in your life, if you just give everything to God, let Him do the doer, be the doer, then He will show you the right path in everything. And in doing that, what you find is then your ego is not involved. I never have lectured, although I've given thousands of lectures, because I never felt I was lecturing. I never feel that I have written books or music or anything. He's the one who has done it through me. But the thing is that I had to do it as well as I possibly could. And so when I write, I may go over something 50 times before I'm satisfied, because I want it to be as pure and good an offering to God as I'm able to make it. But at the same time, I feel that He is offering it to Him. And so I've refused to let it be that I'm doing this. Well, this is the way Krishna is teaching us, that the more we can feel that He is the doer, He is the one acting through me, the more we can feel that His bliss is there. And it's an expansion of bliss. It's not just a sort of heavy load like Old Man River. You and me, we sweat and strain, bodies all aching and racked with pain. Tote that barge, lift that bale, get a little drunk, and you land in jail. This is the way of the world. We think how heavily we're working and so on. Somebody who lives for God lives with joy. He doesn't think about how hard it is. He just thinks of putting his bliss and living in that bliss. This is the way of equanimity that leads to God consciousness. This scripture of the Bhagavad Gita is such a wonderful teaching because it teaches you on all levels of life how you should live, how you should act in order to please God, or I should say, to merge into His bliss. Joy to you.